The Say Something podcast is brought to you by amomentwithmorris.com and blackblueprints.com. That's blackblueprints with a Z.com. I'm Jermaine Morris here with the one and only Mr. Barry Accius.
Blessed and highly favored.
Bringing you the Say Something podcast.
Say something, say something, say something.
Yes, where Barry and myself get together every week and we talk about everything going on out here in the traffic in this life in these streets.
What's happening in these streets, girlfriend?
Yeah, stuff that we feel like not only Barry and myself should be saying something about, but we as in everybody should be saying something about.
Like those tones, my vocals is getting better.
Like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
Man, look at here. Shouts out to everybody that continues to listen in and everyone that's continuing to gravitate to say something and you're saying something. And I think we got a lot to say tonight. Episode
number 30.
Coming at you with the 40.
Number 30. Who's 30?
You about to start to... Isn't Steph Curry 30?
Chef Curry with the pot?
Yeah, I think he's Curry.
Yeah, I guess so.
Curry's 30.
I guess so.
First of all, shouts out to all the brothers on the basketball court that's getting those millions.
Yeah, Steph with the 201.
And then your boy Harden with the
228. Yeah, 228 million.
If I was 6'5" and I didn't smoke weed and practiced on my left hand and my jump shot, I would have probably not come in this era. I'd have been a little bit further, but I'd be somewhere around the time getting some of this money, man.
Yeah, good to everybody out there who's prospering. If you don't do it with a ball, if you don't do it with a microphone, you may do it with a pen and paper. You may do it on a keyboard, pushing buttons. You may do it with pushing a mop or a broom.
Listen, whatever the hell you about to say, I don't know. But check this out. No keyboard's getting that much money. All I have to say.
Oh, that's not true.
Well, I mean,
listen,
228 million for 4 years.
Yeah, that's Bill Gates with a keyboard.
Oh well, that's what
I'm saying. Yeah,
okay, excuse me.
All them techies.
Yeah, let's talk about billions, not millions.
Yeah, all them techies is doing with a keyboard in the mouth.
That, but at the same particular time, just before we get into the real show, all that money that these brothers is obtaining, that's a beautiful thing, and blessings on their blessings. But I would hope that, because I just left Vegas, right, and we was talking offline, and it's crazy to me that all of that casino, all of that work that's out there in Vegas, black hands have nothing to do with it except that one thing, and that's entertainment. So when I hear these brothers making all of this money, and of course they got to pay a few individuals out, they got their living expenses, and there's certain monies that will come out, right? But these are guaranteed contracts. I just don't know why not more of these brothers could sit there and look at each other and be like, yo, this is what we should do. I see a lot of individual things and probably things that happen with their team, but I don't see many brothers collaborating on some real power structure industries. We're not talking about strip clubs. I'm going in Vegas and I'm thinking like, well, Floyd Mayweather is a man when it comes to fight night, but he ain't got no casino. So it's kind of like that power structure. Sometimes I just wish that these guys to eventually let us know what is the real truth of why we can't get these things. Because, I feel there's a lot of underlying different things that go on behind the scenes that don't allow us to get into certain industries. But it would just be nice. And I would love it to see some of these brothers and sisters that are making this money. But, I don't think the WNBA will ever get to this amount of money.
No.
But create something that's legacy building in such a magnificent and powerful way that makes a statement. Because when you go into Vegas, man, you feel a statement. And I don't believe that we have had yet to get that collaboration. We've done the entertainment part, but just to be able to create those services. I'm not talking about black men and black women. You'll see them plastered on all these billboards and they're coming to entertain, but they're getting paid for a service. And after that, all of that money, we gave you what you got. You ain't getting all of this hotel money because I don't think we're moving in a direction of thinking long term on something bigger and better.
Yeah, I think Vegas is a particular beast. But I do completely agree with what you're saying. There's a lot of.
That's a good way to start off the show. Us agreeing.
Yeah, it happens. There's a particular thing when you specifically address Vegas, but by and large that shouldn't be. The fact is that we don't have the hotel chains. That's not a Vegas issue. Partnering up with for the big huge the equivalents to the Hiltons, a big hotel chain that you can do globally, or even the venues where we do residencies. Like you go to these cities in. Mariah's here for 3 months. Mariah's getting her check, but we should be more implemented in maybe not getting a casino, because like I said, that's particular, but setting up these venues for performances, and even out of cities like Vegas. We are so many across the board.
Yeah.
And you take like a James Harden, that's 228 million. There's no income tax out there. The taxes are different. Yeah. So we could set up Houston, Atlanta, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, the places where we're heavy, where we have a huge cultural influence as well as the population.
Yeah. You said New York too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We can. These are places, and the places that are failing, that would be more incentive. The fact of the matter is, if you go to Detroit, where Chinese are buying up Detroit left, right, and left again. But there's a lot of black people in Detroit. Why is that not a mecca for bringing back Motown and reestablishing musical venues and performances and hotels and all that stuff where we will go to see our people perform?
Yeah.
That should be all us.
It kills me that when we start talking about things like this, we, the Negroes, have been so okay with the fact that we won't build it, but we for sure as hell will help maintain it and bring in the money and bring our best to these establishments so they can treat us however they want. If you don't got dollars that make sense, they're going to treat you. Because you think about all the rules that they have and going to these venues, a lot of that. Yeah. Like I was reading it, my daughter, she turned 21. That's the reason I was in Vegas. And Vegas is a lot different when you're not smoking, drinking, or gambling. Because I did none of that, right? So it was just a list of things that they did not want to have in their club. And that was just like basically say black folk. You cannot.
Yeah.
Right? So when I see these things, and then when I go to like a black establishment, went to a restaurant in Oakland, soul food spot that was open on this Monday coming back. It was fabulous. I forgot the name of it, but oh man, it was owned by some church folks, but switched over. I think it was I forget, Lena's or something like that. But dope food. I loved walking in it, and it was black. It felt black. It didn't go away from moving from black, right? Yeah. And it wasn't, and it was elegant. It was high class. It was in the hood, but still, it was a dope product, right? I don't see why we get so exhausted and just trying to move in the gauntlet of just constantly saying we're going to help build someone else's instead of building our own. So again, we can have the choice. And that's has always been my thing. It's not racist to be like black first. It's not racist to say have your own food, have your own hospital, have your own entertainment venues. That's not racist. It's just being smart. It's being a smart business person, because we don't have those kind of functions. And if we do, please start telling us where they're at so we can start supporting them.
Yeah. So we're in Sacramento, California. And here we've had a couple of our prominent athletes go on to be successful, whether it be basketball, football, wherever, and come back home and want to try to establish some businesses and do some stuff here. One guy who was adopted here, he's from Michigan, but Chris Webber, played for the Sacramento Kings. He adopted and loved by the city. He had a restaurant here for a few years, and they were holding live music, stand-up comedy. It was everything.
Food was horrible, but everything was great.
Yeah, everything under the sun that was being done out over there in one of the regions of the outskirts of town. In any event, it was popular for a while, and then
very popular.
It started to decline, and primarily the food was a factor because it was a restaurant, and once the novelty of a NBA players' restaurant started to fade,
Nightlife was still good, though.
But it wasn't. So, because I worked over there. And one of the issues that they had was that once we got over the newness of it, the numbers started to drop. And what it was originally trying to be more of a higher end in the beginning, they had to abandon that
and go
to keep the numbers up. So where security started getting people who were not allowed in on certain nights dressed a certain way before,
they were allowed to.
They had to start being let in to function. And once you can kind of gather where it goes from there.
Yeah.
There's another gentleman, Lance Briggs, played for the Chicago Bears.
And then also just with the Chris Webber thing, then there was a shooting as well.
But that's what it led to. There was ultimately a shooting right at the front door.
That was crazy.
And then that was a wrap. And Lance Briggs had his barbecue spot out here.
Chicago Bears player, right?
Yes.
Linebacker or something like that?
Yes, linebacker, went to Elk Grove High School. He went to Arizona, and then ultimately Chicago Bears, played about a decade.
Yeah, he
did
his thing.
Yeah, he teamed up with Brian Urlacher out there. And opened up the Double Nickel Smokehouse, number 55, 55, Double Nickel, whatever. And
smart concept.
Yeah.
Was the food good over there?
Once again, I guess that's to taste, but overly not.
I tried because I had some, like, when I say food, I had some of the appetizers, not the entrees.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the business across the board, but it was a host for a lot of venues.
Yeah, a lot of people went out there.
And so they live music and all that stuff over there as well. Once again, the newness of it went away, and then it closed. So
and they already got something on there already.
It's something else now, but he's out.
But why did he actually say he was leaving? Did he actually say that?
It didn't make sense anymore. Like the numbers were down. As a business, it just didn't make sense.
And even when the nightlife looked good.
Yeah, but you're talking about it wasn't opened as a nightclub, so it was open all day as a restaurant. You know what I mean? So for being open all day, to being food is a primary thing, to then that not being viable income, it's just no longer worth it. And so we start thinking about these things that we open and these businesses that we start. A, how much do we frequent them to keep them open? And B, how stuck do we get? Because there's a lot of times when we have stuff that we start that we just figured it's like, there's a phrase always, you can be true to yourself without being glued to yourself.
Yeah.
Like this is the way I'm gonna do it. This is the recipe. This is the way that my grandma made catfish. This is the way my mama made catfish. This is the way I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
But don't nobody like it. I don't care. And then all of a sudden people don't eat there anymore and the business closes.
Yeah. Not good.
So there are some practices that we have, that the way that we do things and how we frequent our own businesses and how we run our own businesses that kind of are hurting us and growing for what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's I just say this just to close off that topic and get into our other news of the day. I just believe that there has to be a point to where we jointly convert to getting ourselves together to build these economic structures that not only will sustain us, but will also entertain us and also bring value in us. Because I feel like now we're getting cheated, because you can use the Negro for the entertainment purpose, but you can't have the Negro own the entertainment facility, right?
Yeah.
And why I feel like that's shortchanging us, that they make the rules, we got to play by them. And if you're not popping, you're not going to be able to say something. It was crazy because Vegas is a land of where people that you don't think are popping anymore are still popping. I saw Keith Sweat. He had a whole 2-week run. It's crazy.
It's a different dynamic out there.
Very much. I mean, Carrot Top's still out there doing his thing.
Yeah. Residencies are a residency, just in case, for some of you not familiar, it's just where you set up shop somewhere. So like people think once upon Barry Manilow did Tom Jones Vegas runs, Frank Sinatra Vegas runs, Celine Dion out there forever. Jennifer Lopez was out there for a while.
She's still out there.
Yeah, Jennifer Lopez is a residency. Britney Spears is a residency. Yeah. Boyz II Men did a residency. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of payday if you're an artist.
Out there.
It's a big payday if you're the artist out there performing. And that's where once you've established a catalog, that's your goal.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're not traveling the country anymore. You just get to sit down somewhere.
You can travel and you can sit down and be good.
Yeah.
People appreciate you more on that stage.
Yeah.
compared to having to worry about selling out a 30,000 seating venue.
Yeah.
Compared to just having it a little bit smaller. People really want to see you.
Really controlled. You got your own stage done up.
And then you walk in and you still feel like you that celebrity.
Yeah.
That was that celebrity before when he was having those hits and doing your thing, even though J-Lo is making money on TV. So there's some people that are just greedy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's some people that just...
When Mariah was out there, I mean, she had hits all on the radio when she was posted about there. But in any event, I get what you're saying. Like the idea of we'll come out there and we'll make the money on the court, but we're not owning the team.
Listen,
we'll perform on the stage, but we don't own the venue.
Listen,
you know, we're all over your TV screen, but we don't own the film company that's got us on.
Listen,
or the station that you're watching.
Listen,
you know,
balance it out. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we got to be on the systemic side, and I think part of that goes into not necessarily just thought process like we just refuse to listen or refuse to do right. I think a lot of it is in the raising up part, like the stuff that we're taught how we're supposed to behave. You know, because I mean, some of it is that once you're grown and somebody's telling you this is what we got to do to be better. But if somebody's telling you at 45, this is what we need to do to be different, but you were raised up in a household for 20 years being told something completely different, it's hard to deprogram from poor teaching. So I think so when we look at, you know, systemically, our households, the lessons that we're taught, the way that we're set up to do stuff, what we're trusted in, what we believe and how we believe things work, and the systems that we trust, a lot of it isn't necessarily ignorance. It's just very good programming.
Oh, excellent programming. Excellent programming. Excellent programming. I just had a conversation with a friend. And there I said, well, your 2 kids are going to be gone to college now. What are you going to do with yourself? First thing she said
empty
is,
nest.
Definitely empty nest. I'm going to go back to school. And, you know, she's a little older. She's got some weight on her.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, she may be able to pick up a guy or not. I don't know. But when she don't have that established, she doesn't have an established boyfriend. She's not close to getting a husband.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's focused so much on her girls, which is awesome, which is great, I think she hasn't had time to focus on herself. One thing what I did when I was parenting, and now people will say, well, you still are a parent. Your daughter just turned 21.
It's different.
I'm not. I'm an advisor. You know what I'm saying? The parenting thing is I've done that. Now I advise because, you're going to make your own mistakes, going to make your own decisions, but let me help advise you.
If you do it right, that's how it's supposed to be.
That's when let me advise you certain things, right? So I'm the advisor. I was already setting up life after my daughter.
Yeah.
Right? In between the time of being a father, being a parent, the setup was all, I'm going to have this moment with you, but I'm also going to have my life as well. Yeah. So it was a good setup. So as she graduated, it wasn't like, what am I going to do with myself? It was like, yo, this stuff is moving and rocking, and I can probably do a lot more that I don't have those particulars. And you have particulars when you're dealing with your child in school. Pick them up, activities, all these different things. So when she sat there and says, well, I'm going back to school, I want to get a title by my name. I felt like, is that what Negroes all want to do? Want to get a title, whether it's in the front or in the back, to make them feel that there's someone because they don't find a purpose and something in life. And what I said to her, and she might have been offended, and it's not knocking school because I always advocate school for young people and school for anybody of knowledge. But when we go thinking as school as individual, that's when I feel that the issue lies with our folks. Because school as individuals helps nobody. School as a collective, and when I mean collective thought, and I'm going to go to school because I want to do this. Now, I know when you're going to school for certain degrees, certain licenses, that's important. But a lot of times, individuals go to school just to say, white man, this is how much you have to pay me. And now I will get this pay, and I will aimlessly walk and just become a robot. Not like, I got this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to help create and establish. We don't have a idea of going to school because there's so many Negroes that go to school, but black women are the people that go to school more often than anyone, right?
Well, the highest earning advanced degrees.
Degrees, okay.
So
highest earning
degrees. No one gets more advanced degrees than black women in America.
With all these advanced degrees, the Negro is still uneducated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when we go back to talking about the things that we're setting up, people probably say, well, Barry, why are you talking about casinos? I don't care about if it's a casino or it's a hotel. I don't even give a damn if it's, setting up some freaking marijuana dispensaries. I'm just saying for us in a whole, get in the game. What that means is don't just go to school for you. Go to school thinking, like, how am I going to shape and build my community? That's sometimes when we get fed these different things. We're fed, go to school, your life is going to be better. I don't believe in that because you could go to school and you're still going to be broke. When you start creating, using your creative juices in your mind and start building, I feel like there's so much more purpose in that. I just don't want people just to go to school just to sit there and feel like this is an easy way in and it's going to be very comfortable for you.
Yeah, if you take Indian culture, like dot not feather, and a lot of them come over.
Wait, say that again.
Indian.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that part. Would you just
dot not feather?
Did you date an Indian girl or something?
Not before.
Okay,
but no. As a because some people think Indian, they think Native American.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
That's all. Just for clarification.
I had a few of them in my day.
And so, but within that culture, when a lot of them come over as immigrants, they're told be a doctor. Like if you're going to go to school and you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be an engineer. Like, it's not a discussion between the parents and the child. Like, this is what you're going to go to school for. You're going to go to school to be a doctor, to be a successful doctor, that you can make money to support the family, that you have something that's a viable trade that you can do anywhere. You can be a doctor here in America. You can go back home and be one. That's what you're going to school for. To be an engineer for that purpose. To be, an accountant for that purpose. Mm-hmm. We go to school for humanities. Yeah. We go to school and come out with a communications degree. Yeah. And still don't know how to talk to one another. You know, we come back with a degree in African American studies and don't know how to apply group economics, community building, interactions, sustaining healthy relationships within our family structure and a neighborhood. Like we get degrees and stuff that have no real world repercussions or applications once we get out of school.
No impact.
So
there's not 1,000 Negroes going to school for engineering. Yeah.
So so the idea of if you're going to school, and I'm right there with you, it's not knocking about going to school. If you're saying if you're going because the job you want, a degree in this field will pay you more. Yeah. I get it. But if that's your only thought process for it, it might be something to really look at. Because if you're saying, okay, well, a degree in this field, I'll make $10,000 a year more at this particular job. If anything happens to that job, what does that degree do for you? Or are you just looking for that job in another building? Yeah. Like, and is any of that impacting where you come from or where you live? Yeah. And if you keep coming back with no's, like it's not impacting my community, it's not transferable, it's not something that, it's not in a field that I can take what I learn and come home with it, teaching my kids or my neighbors, my family, and improve the conditions that way. That's where the individual shines, but the community struggles.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And like I said, again, it's not knocking people going to school. I don't want to say, believe me, go. But I think we need to start getting up to that point in our minds that we start thinking really how are we going to benefit with that person going to school? How does it benefit the community? That's what I'm saying. Are we getting engineers that can now go and talk to a guy like James Harden and say, hey, bro, I know you got this money and here I am, an engineer. I got this investment idea. I got this plan. We can build these apartments, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Not a strip club, but these apartments, and we can do an apartment here, we can do an apartment there, and we can deal with these landowners. We can buy this land, and we can create a supermarket. It was the saddest thing. I'm in Vegas. The supermarket that was black owned, that had a nice black restaurant in it. Now it no longer is black owned, but black folk are still running it. Yeah. So these kind of things, like, we got to sustain. I shouldn't be overjoyed when I find a black restaurant. And thank God I went and found a black restaurant in Oakland. And I was so excited about it because it was not only a black restaurant that looked the part, but it was a black restaurant that tasted the part. And that's great for me. So I think that sometimes we have to start looking at group economics and group ideas instead of individual economics and individual ideas of what is it doing for me, not what is it doing for our people.
Exactly, because if we're looking at the like I said, the thought process that we're taught. I remember being a kid being told you go to school, and from some way magically going to school would translate to a good job.
Yeah.
There was no real definition of how, but that's what was told. Go to school, you get a good job, you get married, have kids, and you die. Yeah. But when it comes to learning what we do in school and learning whatever you study, thinking about what's told to us and looking at, is it real? Looking at, is this just something that somebody's been telling us because that's what their dad or mom told them, because that's what somebody told them? But is it something we can really apply? Because we have a lot of narratives, a lot of systems that we just buy into, like the educational system. We just blindly buy into it because somebody told us that. There's a lot of systems that we buy into, like we buy into church. And what I mean by that, not to disrespect anybody's faith, but we have the same mentality in the sense of walking by faith.
Hallelujah.
You're going to go to school, and by faith, that education you get in college is going to translate into a sustainable, viable, prosperous profession. Yeah. We'll go into, this system here, the hospital, the medical field. Yeah. That doctor wouldn't give me pills for me or my baby or my grandma that would hurt us. Yeah. I'm just trusting what this doctor tells me what I'm supposed to put in my body is in my best interest. I trust that what the grocery store says is in this package I bought is good for me because they put it in the aisle where they put the goods for me aisle and stuff is at.
And put organic.
Yeah. We trust and buy into a bunch of systems like we look at our faith. And we don't look for facts. We don't look for details. We don't examine it. We just go with what we're told, and then we seem to be surprised when the outcome isn't what somebody told us it was going to be.
And I think we still also trust in that one system that you forgot to mention. I think we have it's a half and half, the law enforcement.
Okay.
The system of law enforcement.
Now, I don't know how much of that we trust in.
I don't know.
I think we're the victim of, and that we're forced to deal with.
Okay, but
I don't think too many of us.
Okay, so let me back it up. We probably, out of all the systems that we trust, that's probably the least one.
Yeah. I don't think any of us goes into thinking that we're getting a fair shake with the judicial system or the law enforcement side of the game. I think we trust that if you send your baby off to college, that your baby's going to come home in a position to prosper.
If you trust when your baby or you are going to church, miracles are about to
happen. Yeah. Like those are things that we just, and that's faith. Yeah. Like we don't have to have, a well structured out plan. No. We just show up.
Show up on Sunday.
Just show up. Yeah. Read the textbook, read the Bible, read the package on the side of the food. There's certain things we just buy into and we just get. So I think maybe saying something too, the fact is there's a lot of things that go on where wrong people are doing wrong things, but I think there's a high percentage of good people who are just teaching the wrong things. It's not a malicious situation. It's not I don't think grandma's got bad intentions.
In some ways.
Or mom's got bad intentions. I think mom may have good intentions, but it's just spouting bad ideas.
I think it's almost a sense of questioning who made you to believe that to be true? Like, like challenging that. Like, what made it? Was it really you? Because we all get into moments, because I was in the moment as well, that when I was down and out, I grabbed the Bible, ran to church, and I felt like this was going to change my life. It didn't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It actually kind of took me past it and kind of was like, and I actually dated a little church girl, and we was planning our lives together, and it was going to be me, her, and everything was going to be good. And next thing you know, she's dogging me because I don't know all the Bible verses, and I wasn't equally yoked in Jesus, and it was like, okay, you know what? And then it was like the testimonies that I had. I'm trying to give it to the youth pastor, and he's passing the ball because he'd rather deal with a con artist that I told him was a con artist.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, okay. I finally came to the conclusion, why am I participating in something that I don't truly even believe in? And why am I investing in something that I know and I feel in my heart of heart that my investment ain't real? That kind of moment isn't discrediting what we feel is a higher power, or if there was something greater than self. That's just saying, if it just doesn't fit, don't buy it and don't wear it. And that's what I had to do with myself.
Yeah.
And when you see systems constantly showing you something totally different, or actually meeting the expectations of your thought, but you said it to so many people and they look at you like you crazy, like, what the hell are you talking about, right? And I say that when we look at this case, 20 years, we had 20 years ago, we had, well, 20 years ago and 19 years ago, we had two of the most phenomenal artists that passed, Tupac and Biggie, right?
Yeah.
And when you get the details of the case, you just look at it from a perspective of the East Coast, West Coast war that was media hype, and the bad boy death row conflict. You look at it, their deaths, and you're saying that, well, they both, one got each other before each other, and no one retaliating on the other, right?
Okay.
But then you look at it on a deeper perspective. You start pinning and checking dots and connections and conspiracy theories, and you look at this way, you be like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that these police officers and these corrupted unit of police men and women had something to do with these murders that we haven't solved for 20 to 19 years? And then it goes to you also saying to yourself, like, well, damn, with places like Chicago, you have all of this murder, and half of this stuff ain't being solved. And you start asking yourself, is the corruption centered on just the people losing their mind, or is also the corruption centered on individuals who are supposed to protect and serve, creating some of the narrative? And that goes into the fact of believing in systems that where you think that these officers or individuals that take this oath would not be as corrupt. But when you look at it, and I bring this up because two of the father and son combination, the Wrights, senior and junior, they were traced back to being a part of this big drug conspiracy in the Midwest. Yeah. Right? And now the linking of that and the Tupac and the Biggie murder, it's all kind of coming out into like pointing fingers into that idea. So
and keeping with that and keeping it, so for someone who thinks that these things don't happen, or for somebody who believes that they do, like to put it in a frame. So let's just keep it LAPD, because that's where a lot of that stuff was coming out of the two guys, the Wright associated with Suge Knight back when he was running Death Row and all that. And to put it in a different kind of context. So during the Reagan administration, the Iran-Contra issue.
Go all the way there, huh?
No, because these are real close together, because we're talking about the 80s. And so with the use of freeway, Rick Ross and all that stuff, running all the drugs with the help of the LAPD through the streets of Los Angeles, which went right up to the Rodney King beating with the LAPD, which then went up to the OJ trial with the tampering and the racial slurs of the police officers, which then went up to the case that you're referring to with Biggie being shot out there in LA and all the death row stuff where the police department was involved. So you're talking about in a 10 to 12 year time period, this one particular department was involved in some of the biggest like domestic issues of corruption that led and sparked to protests, the riots in LA, a lot of the issues. There's laws on the books based upon the OJ trial, like because they make sure we ain't ever gonna go down that road again. Well, a lot of that stuff is based and rooted in the corruption of the police department of one particular. We're just talking about one department. So if you're the type of person who just believes in a system and you just believe that something is the way it is, it's this is where you have to start questioning and checking your belief system. If you're sitting there saying, oh, well, the police department wouldn't do that, or they protect and serve, or where now the narrative is, if he got shot, he must have resisted. He must not have complied. He must have done something. We're showing you patterns of behavior that date back 20, 30 years of these types of practices. Like, so if you're just saying that if your open belief system is these things would never happen, what are you basing that off of?
Yeah.
You know, so the people who think that, you know, the education system is where you should send your kids to get the best, you know, experience that they can have to be the best people. Send them to school. That's where it's supposed to be at. And they'll be fine in school.
Yeah.
And then you keep hearing about teachers having sex with all the students.
Man.
You know, you keep hearing about, you know, unsupervised facilities where students are having sex with each other.
Yes.
You know, the hustle to the standardized testing.
Yes.
You know, where they're expelling your kids and sending your kids to other schools and other districts because their test scores are low.
Yes.
And that offsets the curve for not only that school, but for the district. And that affects funding.
Yep.
You know, these are all systemic hustles. So if you're saying, you know, I'm just going to blindly believe this because grandma told me or daddy told me, or how much checking of our belief system do we actually do?
I don't think we do it enough. And that's the problem. When we always detail every thought of, nah, that couldn't happen. Why can't it? You tell lies, right?
Yeah.
I've told lies. You know what I mean? And that means that they won't. It just kind of like, to me, so we are human and we're built with fault.
Yes.
We are human and we're created with mistakes. And what I know with man, give a little bit of power to any man, the bottom line comes in that with power, a lot of power comes corruption. And if there is something at stake, like money, like more power, like influence, and we talked about it before, you know, resources and access and power, an individual to gain that, to be ahead of the curve, to be the big lion in the jungle, will do anything. Will sell out their mother if they have to. And at the same time, the beauty about the trust factor. We talked about all of these systems, right? All of these systems are based on one thing, trust. Yeah. They have created this idea that these things, you go to the church, you're feeling that reverend, you can do what? You can trust him. You can trust him. You go to that school.
Trust in he.
Exactly. You go to that school. You see that teacher. You believe that teacher. You could trust him. Same with police officers. Not too much for the black community. Yeah. But when you look there and we talked about it, we was going through to figure out how we're going to angle the show. You told me, you're like, bro, here's a statistic for black. Break that statistic down, you said.
So a poll that was done, ironically enough, we're still talking about the LAPD. Okay. We're still talking in this. So keep this in mind. This poll was just done 2 months ago. Oh. This is after the issues with addressing during the Reagan administration, addressing the Rodney King beating, addressing the issue Mark Furman and the tampering of OJ, addressing Christopher Dormer and all the. We're still talking about all this is all the same department. So they're not going nationwide. So people who live in this same area where all of this corruption has happened over the last 20 years, 69% of white people polled said that they trust the LAPD to do the right thing. 69% of Asians said that they trust the LAPD to do the right thing. 54% of Latinos said that they trust the police department to do the right thing.
What's wrong with y'all people?
39% of black people trusted if it all goes down, if it's got to be a judgment call. Yeah. You know, I'm not putting my money on the LAPD.
And with those statistics, these things should scare you. Because for anybody that doesn't know this story, like, please go and do the research. You do the timeline and the multiple people that have been killed. Matter of fact, there was the sheriff, the former sheriff, that was investigating this, and he kind of had the detective, he kind of had that big, here's how this whole thing's laid out, connect the dots. And he had a meeting with some of the sheriffs, and he had a heart attack during the meeting. Yeah. It's like, how's that happen, right?
Like that judge you just found washed up in out there in the Hudson.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, and then I think sometimes they put these shows out here, these sitcoms like X-Files or Law and Order, and some of these stories you think like, come on, man, this is no way. But then if you're a person that watch ID like me, you watch those ID shows and you start seeing these real life episodes that is reality that have happened, that are cases that are documented, right? And you see, well, that's not too far off from what the sitcom is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So the diversion of trying to make you think, it's too Hollywood. No. It's not. Because when you look at the basis of, first of all, why the henchmen were created, being slave catchers, and then when you look at that, there's never been a situation to where corruption has just crippled a police agency to the point where they probably had to shut it down. Maybe a smaller unit, but not to the point where there's like, okay, San Francisco PD, you guys are so corrupt, we're about to shut it down and we're going to bring a whole new line.
Yeah, they don't do that.
That's never happened. It's almost kind of like, well, yeah, here's the story. Because the story of these guys, whether it's former law officers or current, first of all, being involved in gangs, secondly, being a part of a drug cartel and drug trafficking, right, from state to state, how that doesn't make national news. It's kind of still buried underground. How when these police officers in the Bay Area was taking this young adolescent girl who was prostituting and just had their way with them, that to me, it makes me shake my head on why do we play into systems that don't have any function in truth, integrity, or transparency, that just because it's put there out there for us to say, hey, we are here to protect and serve. Hey, you should respect us. We're supposed to respect them. When you give them that much power, they utilize it. They duplicate corruption from state to state, and they run with immunity because no one's really looking at them. And when you bring up conspiracy, see, the thing about it, when you talk about police brutality, you talk about police terror, you talk about corruption, they look at you like you're crazy. Like there's no way they can get away with this. There are some good police officers. You hear that. Yeah. When you hear about politicians, like, nah, he couldn't have done that. He is our president. He would never do that. He's a man. He's a woman. He bleeds just like you. He wakes up in the morning just like you. He gets coffee just like you. He might even smoke a cigarette just like you. Like, he gets horny. She gets horny just like you. Why do we always try to channel that certain people are just more perfect or just more stable and have more discipline than others? When in reality, it's a lot harder, I believe, to be disciplined when you have a lot of money and to be disciplined when you have that much power to not be corrupt.
Okay, so I think that, so if we're looking at this is why I say some of it is not an issue of ignorance as it is a belief in misteachings. So going with exactly with what you said. So in conjunction with all those accounts over the last 20 some odd years of corruption, this is a capitalist society.
Yeah.
And why that is so important and it constantly gets, brought up is that means everything is moving for the dollar. Like the dollar is the base point of everything. So in the poll, when they were talking about, with different races that trust the police department, that was a breakdown by race. There was a second breakdown by class where they were saying, when they then started breaking things down by your demographic, where, higher income, where people were saying that 69% trusted the police, whereas middle class, it was 61%, where then when you got to lower economic areas, around 49%. So what that means is that the experience you have when you have money is much truer to the system that you've been spoken about. So the educational system in an area where you have money and you have resources, that educational system is going to serve you better than a place where you don't.
Yeah.
The law enforcement agency, it's not where they are. Like if you take one county, the money that's spent from a specific area is different than on this side of town to that side of town.
Most definitely.
So if this side of town has money, privilege, influence, resources, access, their experience with an officer is going to be completely different than your broke ass on the other side of the road.
It ain't going to be a fair shot.
No. So when it comes to, who do you believe in, who do you trust, I think the issue is where we're at. Is that we don't teach how the system works properly. We teach to have faith in the sense of, well, in this scenario, this can happen for you. True. Yeah. But I'm not in that position.
Yes, sir.
If you're not in that upper echelon tax bracket, being told just doing A, B, and C will not get you to D based upon where you are. We have to be real about the situation that we're in. Learn how these systems actually work. If we're going to schools and we're getting these advanced degrees, are we getting these sociology degrees? Are we learning about law? Are we learning about the proper way to think, how the system works, the actual breakdown of economics? And then are we taking that information to come back to where we came from and schooling folks how it really works? Mm-hmm. Not just turning our nose up at people who don't know correctly.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of us do. We go off to school and get a degree and then come back thinking we're better than the people we left.
Yeah.
And then there's no conversation there.
Not at all.
Ain't nobody trying to hear you when it's big me, little you.
No. And that's why I cannot stand those systems. That's why I don't like when individuals don't think out the box. Like, why don't you think that police officer could be corrupt? Why don't you think that teacher that's teaching all these 15-year-old girls that are walking with their springy chest out and moving in their body and their shape, like, why don't you think that possibility he might be
all
creeping?
Beyond reproach?
You know
Ain't nobody got an R.
on,
Kelly
man.
in.
Like, it's just a simple fact that how do you move and operate when the lights are off and when no one is watching you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I hear like corruption like this, and it's not just because I'm a fan of the two guys that lost their life, and a lot of it probably could have been prevented. Yeah. And there's so many different, connecting.
There's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers to this whole situation. And then it's also like guys like, P. Diddy, who's benefited off, I think, the whole thing.
Yeah.
That his hands ain't all clean in it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, who wants to even bring that up? Because what we want to believe in is what he's always sold us.
See, it's my best friend, and this is that.
Not only the best friend thing, he is always sold that happy. I'm the dancer. I'm just a playboy. I'm not gangster.
Yeah.
Your daddy was a gangster. So just because you might not have been on the street like your daddy, we've all got a little bit of our parent in us somewhere, somehow. And
just put with that is everyone that was 1 degree of separation from him. So if you go back to Big was Big wasn't a hardcore street dude.
He just sold drugs.
Well, because he was young.
Yeah.
And so he was really similar to Cube. He had a really good storytelling ability, but he wasn't out there like that. Mace, before he found the church and before he was Mace, was Murder Mace.
Yeah.
Was his name when he came out.
Yeah.
Mace had some street ties.
Yeah.
Loon that he came out with, Loon is in prison.
Yeah.
G-Dep is doing life. Shine went to prison on the gun tote charge. There's a lot of dudes that he was like.
Where's Total?
Yeah.
Where's Daddy Kane?
That's a little different.
Where's making the band #1?
That Day 26 and all that. That's a little on the exploitation side.
We don't want to go on a Puff because we can do a whole show on Puff Daddy.
Yeah. But my point is that it's one thing if you're saying that this is your image of who you say you are, but then I have to look at everybody that's around you. And I have to believe more of what I see you surround yourself with as opposed to what you tell me you are. But I think that a lot of that goes into the systems that we buy into and that we believe that a big part of it is we have to start questioning this stuff.
And we have to.
And understand it. Principle number 1, if you're looking at any system that goes through the United States of America, the money is first. And if you're thinking, why would my doctor prescribe something for my grandma and my kids that's not in their best interest? For money.
Yeah.
Why would, law enforcement be involved in corruption and crime when it's supposed to be their job to curb it? For money. Why would people, kick old folks out of their homes that they've lived in for 30 years because somebody wants to move in and change the local liquor store to a dog grooming business? For money. Like everything that we do in the United States is based upon that. If you never get anything else, that in a capitalist society, everything is about the dollar. So if your belief system, whether it be the church, why is the church not involved in these social issues? Because after they changed the law where the state could kick down the church, there's a separation of church and state in school. There's a separation of church and state in so many aspects of life, except for money. Once the federal government was allowed to kick churches back, kick them down, all that mess was out the window. That's why churches don't get involved in social issues like that anymore.
And I've witnessed it from my brother that is one of my warriors I get down with. As soon as he started shaking and saying certain things about certain people in a certain agency that was funding certain things, all of that got cut.
Yeah.
All of that stopped. And it's just like, wow. This is really, it's really not a game, man.
Best thing I heard, so the faith-based initiative, that's where the basis of where the money gets kicked down from. Somebody has said it, and I thought it was a cold piece, that the reason why that the churches don't get involved in stuff like that anymore is because they're linked to the FBI. Yeah. Like the faith-based initiative is that's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Yeah. They're not involved in stuff anymore because they're getting a check. Yeah. And they're getting the capitalist kickdown. Yeah. That's why why wouldn't my church take this money and help reinvest in the community to make a better situation? Because for the money. Yeah. And so when we look at these systems, it's not to say no one should have anything to believe in. I'm just simply saying, are what you believe what you believe? Yeah. Or are you just repeating what your mama told you? Are you just blindly following what daddy's been drilling in your head your whole life? Or that you keep seeing advertised on TV? How many of the thoughts that we work with do we actually challenge, and how many of them are actually ours?
Well, that's why advertisement is so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the most powerful drugs that we have in America. I mean, tag in advertisement, capitalism creates the money. It creates the brand. I mean, think about it. After a while, if a song is being repeated time in and time and again, it doesn't even matter if you like the artist. You catch yourself singing it.
Yeah.
I don't know, for whatever reason, I was singing Future's Mask Off. And I was singing the other Kodiak Black song. Yeah. It's like,
you play it long enough.
Yes.
Doing radio and DJ and stuff, whatever, you would get those things, and then you have to play it so many times in an hour.
And I literally really didn't even like Future as an artist, and I started liking him as an artist. This was all these things pushed, right? So I just want people to start realizing and understanding that there's so much more to things that we hear and see. It's just not that our communities are in ruins because a bunch of black folks decided to act bad.
Yeah.
There is reasons why. I've always said this. If cops really wanted to stop crime, they would stop crime. I say to one point, did they stop the Black Panthers? Oh, yes, indeed. Case proven. Because when they want to do it,
yeah, they're very efficient when they want to.
It will get done. But crime is a part of capitalism. Without crime, you don't have capitalism. So, in a sense, you need some crime, right? You need some crime because you got it. It's such a funnel of a money circuit. You put some people in prison, the DA's happy, prosecutor gets some play, and then you got some Negroes and slaves getting
there's a
paid,
lot of money.
Getting paid a nickel an hour, or a penny an hour, right? But when you're looking at it to the extent of when I was digesting all this information, I was just like, these are the reasons why we can never get ahead in our communities, because you don't have people in the right wing doing the right thing for the community. And this is the reasons why I stand in my stance, as many other black folk do, and say the whole system has to be eradicated, rebuilt, definitely has to be destroyed, and it can't be reformed. Because you reform it, you're going to have still some of those dwellers that might have not really been in, but they had all idea and understood. And it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to be a whistleblower because I don't want to be a quote-unquote snitch. One thing I've always said, the biggest non-snitchers are the police officers. Ain't the people on the streets.
Yeah.
People on the streets are going to tell you something, they just get off. The police, when do they really do that? And if they do, something ends up happening. And it goes into the fact that when like I said, unraveled all this, we talked, is it this probably some of the stuff Chris Donner was talking about. Like, I'm finna lay a whole can of exposing these corrupt police officers until he got burned up to crisp.
He had to die. And well, now granted, he was getting his passenger 57 on after he dropped all that information, but that was after his repeated requests of trying to go up the proper channels. And we realized that the level and degree of corruption was just so great that it was everywhere.
And these stories, it doesn't get enough of the push because there's other stories that line it. Like, what I'm so frustrated about is how the freak do we talk about Blac Chyna and Rob Kardashian? First of all, answer me this one question. What the fuck does Rob Kardashian do?
He's Rob's son.
Thank you. So you talking about fitness, and then you're talking
Robert
about
Kardashian's son.
A former stripper who created this crazy plot, and again, believing in the system. Like, no, someone won't do that. But we all believe that she would do that. But why are we believing she will do that, but we're not believing that corrupt will be this corrupt, right?
Yeah.
So here we are focusing all our energy on these sensational stories, these stories that allegedly entertain, that get national news coverage.
Yeah.
Before entertainment news was entertainment news, it didn't get national press.
Page 6.
And now it's right on the top of everybody's freaking Twitters, Facebook, Instagrams. And here we have a big bust that could create a change in what we see in law enforcement, but also can solve murders of Tupac and Biggie, 20 and 19 years, that all of people have had conspiracy after conspiracy, and it could possibly be all connected if they do it the right way. Because I've also heard that your boy Big Suge, he's trying to get out of that prison, man.
Yeah, Suge, he's ready to snitch on everybody, and Suge gonna roll over.
I mean, this is gonna be awesome when he does it, man. Can you imagine that book, that story?
Very easily. And so when we start talking about these things that we have to be mindful of, not just following something because we've been told something. These ideas in these systems need to be challenged. The reality is in order for these systems to start over, it will have to be at the expense of this nation. Yeah. So if that does not happen, there has to be a shift in the belief system to the systems. Understanding that you are treated differently based upon where you are in the financial pecking order.
Yeah, understand
that understanding that money is what makes this thing move. And if you don't have any, and that's why it's so important, the basis of group economics and working together and institution building, schools, banking, all that sort of stuff, an infrastructure that we can participate in the way that the machine works. Because those other groups vote differently based upon their economic situation. And that if we're not a viable source of income, meaning we're quick to say that, oh man, my taxes pay that cop's salary. Yeah, but you pay the least amount of taxes amongst anybody. Man. So if I'm gonna go, who do I care more about? Yeah, you pay, man. Collectively, okay, y'all paid $100,000 worth of taxes for where you guys make. They paid $10.4 million in taxes. If I got to choose who I'm siding with, it's them all day, every day, even if they're 1,000% in the wrong. That's the type of mentality that we have to address how stuff really works, about getting out of just our feelings about things, understanding how they really move, how they really operate, how they really get down, and not being afraid to
say something.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to say something. You have to sit there and look at it for what it is. And what you said about that being with the groups and the economics.
Yeah.
The reason why we get played, because we're not even on the playing field.
Yeah.
The reason why we can have black police officers, and that's one thing about it. I'm not talking about white police officers. I'm sure they're involved.
Yeah.
But we're talking about some of these guys with black police officers. When people talk about that narrative, we need more black cops. For what? They're just as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the white cops. Because they're really going to push it to us because they see this as, ha, 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 ha. This is the way I really get on the ball, because who's going to report it? I can be as corrupt and I can sit there and move and dance the way I want to with these Negroes, because these Negroes have a code. So who's going to really believe that me, a black cop, the cop that's supposed to be the one who comes in a community and makes a community feel at ease because I'm black,
Yeah.
is going to be corrupt. So when we look at where we're at in this moment, us denying the ability to create and build infrastructures that are sustainable, us continuing to wave away from us saying ownership and building a ground that has some substance and also has some viability and some buy-in. Not the fact that we have all these individuals, Oprahs, these Michaels, these LeBrons, these Currys. It's awesome. But once we have spearheaded certain things that can create mass, that's when the respect level goes up, and we're not going to get these situations happening. And when we can go into our own communities and say, to hell with it, we can just clean this whole shit up ourselves.
That's where you start to see the change for real. It doesn't matter the color of your assailant, because the only color that they recognize is green. And if you don't have any, they don't care. So these are things that we have to become mindful of, being aware of, not just following stuff because grandma said that's what we're supposed to do. That we actually have to be dialed in on how to make a change and understand how this system really works. And not only being active about being driven, being focused and doing something, but teaching and schooling each other and this next generation coming up. And that only happens when you say something.
Say something.
I'm Jermaine Morris here with Barry Accius.
BerryAccius, the Facebook, Twitter, Barry Accius, same thing. Instagram at Team Void, blackblueprints.com. Get your items, get your gear, get fitted up.
Jermaine Morris on Facebook. Every other social media platform is at JMorrisCEO. This has been the Say Something podcast. And until next show,
yes, sir,
we will holler at you later.